This is the Minding Your Own Business podcast, brought to you by Elder Research. Each episode will bring in data and analytics gurus from around the world as they regale us with their data analytics stories and enlighten us with their secrets for how to turn data into actionable insights. Now, here's our host, Evan Wimpy, who will guide us as we dare to mind our own business.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Minding Your Own Business podcast. I'm your host, Evan Wimpy, and I'm excited to introduce today Liping Wu. Liping is a senior manager for data science at Advanced Auto Parts, where the best parts are their people. She's been there for a little over 4 years, and prior to managing the data science team, she served as a senior data scientist. Liping has a master's in analytics from the Institute for Advanced Analytics at North Carolina State University. Liping, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming.
Thanks a lot, Evan, for having me. And thank you so much for remembering our company slogan so well. I really appreciate that. Our people are our best part. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, whatever commercials you guys ran in the 1990s, they stuck with me. And I'll
we do
remember
have
it forever.
A new jingle if you wanted to check out. Yeah.
Oh, we do?
Yeah.
Can you share it? It's not like super
I don't know.
secret, is it?
So we just heard about it just a few weeks ago. I don't know whether that's public or not, but unfortunately I cannot sing it as of right now. Maybe give me a few more time,
Okay.
I'll do that.
We'll have you back on the show in a few months and we'll talk about the new jingle and all the analytics behind it.
A little bit about myself. I was majored in literature in my previous life, and I went to IAA in 2017 to study advanced analytics, and then switched my career gear to data science. And upon graduation, I joined AAP in 2018 as a data scientist in advanced AI team, which is an enterprise level data science team that supports the data science needs across the company. I moved to senior manager role last year and currently managing projects while still kind of stay hands-on more technical challenging projects. Some of the projects that I have worked in the past few years, including customer lifetime value analysis, finance forecasting, the voice of the customer using natural language processing techniques, and currently working on the supply chain labor forecasting project.
Okay, awesome. That is a very wide scope, and that's an exciting role to be in. Manage a team, grow a team, but also stay technical, hands-on. Very cool. And you told us a little bit about the scope there. It's wide. Can you talk? So I'm just a person who just owns a car and tries to avoid doing work on it whenever I can. But that's like my perception of what Advanced Auto Parts is. They're the retail store where I go and buy an oil filter. You maybe just give us a quick background on Advanced Auto Parts, sort of maybe the scale of the business. What is it all? Is it all you're selling to people like me, the casual oil change person?
For sure, yeah. We actually serve DIY customers, as in your example, as well as professional customers. So if you're comfortable with, like the oil change or change the, windshield wipers or even the batteries, we have awesome team members at the store to support you, help you diagnose what is the issue, what type of the products you need, and even help you install some products, for example, batteries or light bulbs for free. So if you're not that hands-on on maybe especially some of very challenging jobs for the car maintenance or repair, you can also go to the mechanics, and we also have a relationship with them. So a little bit about Advanced Auto Parts. It's an automotive aftermarket parts retailer. We're headquartered in Raleigh, and we serve, as I said, both professional and DIY customers. The split for our company is roughly 60% and 40%. So talking about our business functions, we mainly have two kind of big categories. One is, we call it a customer support center. That includes all the supporting functions, including finance, marketing, merchandising, supply chain, and inventory, etc. And we also have our field team. We have roughly 5,000 stores and more than 40 distribution centers in the United States and Canada. So that's about our company.
Wow. Yeah, that's quite large. And I'm not the person that you need to cater to, the casual DIYer.
Oh, no. We care each single customer, and we love to serve you if you come to our store to buy whatever that you need. The oil filter,
Awesome.
yeah, other stuff.
Awesome. Thanks. I'll see you once a year then for the next few years.
That sounds good.
So so you're at an enterprise level for analytics, which, you're talking about DIY and, professional mechanics. You mentioned some projects that you've done in like the customer lifetime value, the finance space within some operations. I'd imagine there are a lot of different business functions and then a lot of different focuses within there where analytics could be useful. So I'm curious, from your vantage point, how do you sort of vet those? Do you go looking for projects to complete? Do people come to the enterprise analytics team? And sort of how do you decide what to work on?
Yeah, that's a very good question. It's actually the combination of what you mentioned. I would say it's a combination of the top-down and bottom-up approach. So as I said, we actually have other data science and analytical teams embedded in, the separate business functions, but our team is a little bit different. It's more kind of like an internal consulting group that supports, the data science needs across the different teams. So usually what we do is, at the mid of the year, towards the end of the year, we have our annual operation planning meetings. That's kind of like the top-down approach. It's a whole process of aligning the company's strategies and near-term goals. And then the focus in the coming year for all the different departments in the company, maybe for the coming year or even including the next 2 to 3 years, the focus across the company would be centered around this company key initiatives. So our team's project will be aligned to those we call it tier 1 initiatives. And we also have bottom-up approach. We, towards the kind of later of the second half of the year, we will have like team member brainstorming session on the opportunities with our existing business partners or new business partners. So we socialize who we are, what we have done previously, or continue the previous conversation or previous projects on what we have done and what we might be able to do together. And then we will come back as a team, have a conversations with the partners to figure out what's the scope, what's the impact, and what is the potential resource needed for that project. After gathering this, ideas from the senior leaders and from our business partners, and our team will sit together to walk through the ideas one by one. We will have like a short description of what this project is about, and then we will have a short Q&A session on, what is the proposal, what is the concern, is that even feasible, what might be, other areas that we should focus on, or whether we can combine some of the efforts together. And we can take a vote. So the end product of this whole process is a list of the projects that our team would like to work on with ranking priority. So then, our leaders in the team, they will plan accordingly as we progress through the year and then as resources taken or freed up.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a well-oiled process to use.
We have improved a lot during the past few years, and I'm proud to say we're doing it better and better. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. And you sort of mentioned loosely the operation planning, and then your team coming together to help scope out and right size and ask the right questions. Is your team just data science? I'm curious where maybe like an IT or data engineer would sit in that process. I'd imagine they would have a lot of input into what data is available to build your models, and then what infrastructure is available to serve your models.
Right. That's a really, really good call out. So the team structure in advanced AI, we have 3 kind of sub teams. One is focused on analytics. So our main support currently is to marketing team, because marketing team is relatively advanced in terms of how they use data and how they use analytical insights. And we have an enterprise data science team, which is kind of like our core data science force. And then we also have a data engineering team who helps us to connect with the IT, with our data owners, other infrastructure in the company and curate the data for us, migrate the data for us, clean the data for us. So I think these three teams work very, very closely together on the daily basis, and we do cross-pollinate a lot on the ideas, serve each other on the knowledge, and also serve as each other's counselors on how we should approach this project. We would have some projects that we pull resources from all three teams together to form a project team. It's more kind of on our daily operations, it's more kind of like a project based. As you said, I feel really, really fortunate to have data engineers in our team as well as data analysts, so we can work very closely together. And that really serves well for our kind of goal, our mission of building end-to-end solution to our customers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really like the ideal for most people working in data science, or most people who are trying to get data science implemented. Like, that is the key. Can you have good communication between your business stakeholders who have some initiative they want, the people who can do the modeling, and the people who can move the data and move the output from models? So
right. I remember when we were in institute, where like our professors told us that the time kind of split for a typical data science work is like 80% you just massage the data, getting the data in the right format, right? And then now you can do like a really fancy stuff of the data science modeling, analyzing it. But I was not aware that prior to that 80%, there was like a whole maybe 120% of the efforts of even finding where the data is, right? Like how to get the data into the team's process, to the team's access. So it's a whole lot of efforts going on there. Yeah. So we really appreciate that we have our cool data science, data engineers in the team, that we work very closely together.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious, did the timing, was it sort of in parallel that your team on the analytics and data science team was built up and embedded there at the enterprise at the same time that the data engineering team was?
Yes, it was structured like that when the team started. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. You also mentioned in passing a little bit when thinking about prioritizing, you said you're at the enterprise level, but there are embedded data science teams in businesses, in the different business verticals. I think that's a pretty key question for a lot of folks that are trying to start or trying to understand how they can organize their data science resources. And do you have the sort of federated enterprise level, or do you have the embedded? And it sounds like you guys sort of have a hybrid approach. I don't know if there are pros and cons to that. If you think that's the useful way to do it, or a reason why it fits best for you guys at Advance?
That's a very broad question. It's a great question. Yeah. I'm just going to try my best to share the thoughts from my perspective. I do see the advantages of having an enterprise data science team, because usually compared to the folks who work embedded in the business functions, the folks who work in kind of more centralized, more close to teams with the folks who look like us, who have the similar skill sets, it's easier to kind of cross-pollinate the technologies as it evolves, because we all know as data scientists, we need to keep learning every day. Otherwise, maybe a month later, the new technologies coming out and you're still using the old technology, which takes a long time, might not as good performing as your new ways of doing things, especially in deep learning field, NLP field. That's especially true. So in terms of applying the new technologies, keep the whole team motivated to keep learning and growing the technical skills, I think that's definitely better. And having those folks that you can cross-check the ideas with, as I said, with the data engineers and data analysts and data scientists, that way it's more likely you're gonna find a more optimal solution for the problems you wanted to tackle. The downside of this enterprise, or the challenge of the data science enterprise data science team faces typically are you're not so close with the business functions. So you might not, it does not come natural for the team members to understand the goal, the scope, even the day-to-day of those business partners. Like, what do they need to deal with? What do they care about? Like, because we are not in their shoes. And when we talk to them, it's more like a partner instead of one part of them. So the business buy-in might be like a challenge, like a potential hurdle that you need to go through. You need to win the trust instead of, if you are in their team, you're part of the team. You have the trust, right? And you have the resource that's needed. I think the reason why we have it right now, we actually don't have data science team for every business function. Depends on the size and then the analytical requirements of that business function. We have also a big data science team in merchandising. It's because the day-to-day they deal with figuring out the inventory, figuring out the demand. There's a lot of forecasting needs to align and to make sure that we get the right, what are the set of, let me take my words back. What is the set of the products that's needed that reflects the true customer's demand in each store location? So that's a big task to deal with. So that's why there needs to be a data science team supporting that forecasting needs and supporting maintenance of that forecasting. I don't know where we're going. I think compared to some kind of, tech companies, it's much easier or more natural for them to have each data science team embedded in the business, because each business function is so advanced in terms of their analytical needs, their data science needs, and how they turn those data insights into the actions. We're just not quite there yet. I'm also wondering that, for a smaller size of the company or even the startup, it might be different pattern. It's just like this current pattern suits our business needs the best. Yeah.
Sure. I think that makes perfect sense. And I think I was going to ask about the teams, maybe the business functions that aren't as mature. And if they don't need an embedded analytics team or embedded analytics people, hey, that's fine. They can still lean on the enterprise until they sort of reach that threshold. So right. I think that makes perfect sense, the way you've sort of tried to balance those things there. I also really like you're talking about the team and working together and learning together. I think the most frustrated data scientists that I've ever talked to are the ones that are sort of on an island embedded with a team as the only data scientist. And it's frustrating and you don't get the opportunity to learn. But also there's a lot more opportunity for mistakes or for bad practice, even with the most seasoned data scientists. There's nobody
You wanted
else
to
there.
have a group of the superheroes to save the world instead of only single one, right?
Yeah, everybody's got their own kryptonite, but whatever. Spider-Man doesn't get impacted. I don't know. Carried the analogy too far. Awesome. Okay, I want to ask you a couple more things. You've been at Advanced Auto Parts, I think, a little over 4 years. So I think it's
4 years, yeah.
All right. Oh, close to 4 years. Not a surprise to anybody. About halfway through that time, there was a global pandemic that started. And I would imagine that's changed everything that every data scientist does. But I know I've driven my car a lot less. I would imagine people are driving their cars a lot less. I'm curious if there's, what has the impact been? Have you had to go retrain all new models? Have you had to throw away a bunch of models that you used to rely on?
Yeah, that's a very, very good question. And it's not just about cars, right? Like a pandemic has changed people's lifestyles a lot in every aspect that we can imagine, right? We actually, that was kind of the concern, when the pandemic really started, like especially in March, April 2020-ish. Like people just stayed at home, not doing anything. And it was big uncertainty at that time. I read some articles in Towards Data Science, and then the author announced that this is the end. This will be the end of forecasting period. It was honestly
extreme.
not that bad. It was not bad like that. But in terms of the people driving around, we do actually track the mobility data from Google, which provides information on the percentage mobility change. 6 categories of the places. I think it includes like retail, grocery, parks, public transit, and workplaces, I think. Forgot the last one. Residential. So it seems like after the initial uncertain times in March, April 2020, people started to drive again, much less, but started to drive again, especially to parks or for outdoor activities. And according to the Bureau of Transportation Statistics, the shorter distance trips, the trips that are less than 25 miles compared to 2019, it had some really big decrease, like roughly decreased to 50% in 2020 and about like to 70-80% in 2022. But the trips with a little bit longer distance, between like 50 miles to about 500 miles. So you can think of that roughly as from Raleigh to Greensboro, that's about 70 miles. And from Raleigh to New York City, that's about 500 miles. So except for the dip in 2020, like April 2020, people are taking more trips than 2019 in the past 2 years.
Wow.
So I think that's very fascinating, right? Like these are the trips that we can manage still driving, and it's safer than taking the flights.
Wow. Yeah,
right.
that's counterintuitive for sure, but it does make perfect sense if folks are avoiding flights. Yeah.
Right,
wow.
right. Like, so that's data is the power, right? That being said, we did see some kind of big change in the sales patterns and the customers' behavior during the past 2 years. And actually, believe it or not, this had some positive impact on, in our company, on modernizing the forecasting methods. Because in some business functions that people, they used to use like old-fashioned forecasting methods, such as just a weighted moving average. And they start to realize when the historical patterns don't hold true, they need to switch to more sophisticated forecasting models instead of just applying the average and applying the weights on the averages, right? So the auto parts industry had record high DIY sales after the dip in March and April-ish in 2020. We actually had really good sales year in 2020 and 2021 because counterintuitively might seem, but actually it would make sense because we all know that people have more time at home and they take care of their houses. They also take care of their cars on those jobs, those maintenance jobs that probably are long overdue, right? And then also the pandemic accelerated the shift to e-commerce. So some industry quotes that, on average, by 10 years, they kind of pushed the e-commerce forward by 10 years. But it might vary depending on which industry you're in, but our e-commerce also benefited from the purchase pattern shift in 2020 and 2021.
Okay.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the modeling challenge, because these unseen patterns did bring challenges to modeling because the previous patterns now don't hold true. What shall we do? We made two aspects of the adjustments mainly. One is adding more features to capture the macro factors. So for example, the COVID case data, mobility data, consumer confidence index, stimulus check. We do have those kind of more features in kind of retraining some of our models. And we also tried to tune the models to focus more on the recent data and rely more on near-term patterns instead of longer-term patterns from 19 or 18 previously. So I would also like to add here is that we did find that simplicity is the virtue in these changing times. The complex models usually require to retrain more frequently because the features might also change drastically and distort the predictions. While, for example, the Serimax model that we built in 2020 it's still generating the reliable forecastings now. Yeah.
All right. Yep. Simplicity is certainly a virtue.
Yeah.
That's great. And it's incredible how counterintuitive some of those things are. Like retail auto parts was one of the things I thought, well, that'll be hugely impacted. But yeah, you make a very reasonable case that, well, the data doesn't support that. And I think it's seen across a lot of industries that e-com has been accelerated greatly in the past couple of years. Super. So I want to ask you one more question, Liping. You walked us through sort of the enterprise level planning process at Advanced Auto Parts. Let's just hypothetical, we scrap that whole planning process and it is the Liping show. And you get to set the priorities for, the next 6 months or even for just one singular project. If you've got one thing that you and your team can work on and you've got full buy-in from the top, from the CEO level down to the business who's going to be actioning on the decisions you make, and you get to work on whatever you want.
Yeah.
Where do you point your team? Where do you point your efforts?
In the heavens, right? Like whatever that I can decide for myself. That is a very, very bold question. I think if I have everything settled, like the store stakeholders alignment, all the buy-in that I need and the resources I need, I would like to continue my work on the supply chain side. I'm currently working on a supply chain labor forecasting project. I have come to the realization how complicated and dynamic process it is when I started to work on this project. And we all know from direct experience that how global supply chain have been pushed to the brink over the last 2 years, right? Many aspects of this complicated system have been heavily challenged, and the impact is everywhere, from the computer chips that we read from the article to toilet paper that we go to the grocery store or the supermarket and we experience ourselves. So there is a lot of opportunities in the journey of modernizing the traditional supply chain. I think the project going on supply chain side will be especially exciting because AAP is expanding our business. There is a huge business impact in supporting the ongoing replenishment in needs. Our DC still needs to take the huge volume in on a daily basis from the suppliers across the world, as well as they need to make sure all the replenishment going to the stores according to the plan so our customers can have what they need in our stores. Keeping this kind of huge chunk of work going on while optimizing under the constraints of the supply. We're still facing that challenge now. The transportation, the logistics, right, and the labor shortage that we are experiencing now in the United States. It's super challenged, but I think it would be super fascinating.
Yeah, that's a big problem, a challenging problem,
right.
And a fun one to work on from analytics.
Yeah.
I would think, especially at Advanced Auto Parts, just the scale of what you do, dozens distribution centers, thousands of stores, right. and all of the constraints that go into it. So I hope you get to continue working on it. I'm sure you and your team will experience a lot of success. Liping, thanks so much for joining us on the show today. It's been super enlightening.
Thank you so much, Evan, for having me. I did enjoy talking with you.
All right. That's it for the show today. Make sure to like, subscribe, multiply, and divide, and we'll see you next time on the Minding Your Own Business podcast.